Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, TV, and streaming, and all sorts of good things. And ladies and gentlemen, we are so fortunate that the Celestials themselves have opened up the heavens and sent down for our listening pleasure today, the one and the only Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how are you doing today, sir?
Well, I've been woken up, John, and I made it on the show today. I'm very excited about tonight.
Well, I'm glad your emergence has happened and you're able to join us here today. Guy, you probably know I got to go see Eternals last night.
I know.
And we're going to talk about it here in a second, but I got to show you guys something. When we walked out of the parking structure and we walked out onto the street in front of where the thing is happening, I saw something that we have never seen at a premiere before. Up on the rooftops, snipers, literal snipers were up, and this picture, you can't see them, but they're holding their sniper rifles. They are. There are actual snipers up there, ready. At first, Rob, I thought maybe it was Bob Chapek keeping his eye open for me, saying, "Watch out for that Campea guy. He's shit-talked me for the last time." But woo, they weren't kidding about security on this thing. They were not messing around on security when it came to this event last night. But the event was great. It was really, really fun. I'll bring up a quick picture here of Ann and I last night at the event. Here's Ann and I down on the red carpet. Oh, the carpet was actually blue, but we got down there last night, had a great time, and we're, of course, going to be talking about it here today, talking about Eternals. And Rob, you and I are going to go see Eternals a little bit later today.
I'm very excited.
I'm excited for you to see it. But Rob, listen, before we get into our stuff, let me vent on something here for a second.
Please do.
That drives me absolutely crazy. Okay, look, one of the big issues, and this is not one of our official topics or anything, but one of the big issues in movie fandom, of course, is spoilers and like people spoiling things for others. And, you got to be a special kind of pathetic little weasel that you get your kicks, because no girl ever wants to touch you. So you got to get your kicks somehow by trying to spoil other people's enjoyment by putting spoilers online. It's like, whatever. If you're that little weasel pathetic, that's what you are. That's your life, whatever. But what really frustrates me, because after seeing Eternals last night, there are a number of big surprises in it. There are a number of big surprises in it that I think fans, whether they love the movie or don't like the movie, I think there's some big surprises that a lot of fans are going to get a real kick out of seeing, right, when it happens. It's one thing when some pathetic little weasel living in his mom's basement posts a significant major surprise spoiler for people. It drives me absolutely crazy when people who are in a position like me that are very lucky and fortunate that we get to go to these things in a professional kind of scenario. So I'm thinking about like film critics and reporters and things like who get to go to these advanced screenings. People like myself who get lucky enough to go to these screenings. When these people then jump online and start disseminating spoilers. Like it's one thing when it's some pathetic cousin humping loser living in their mom's basement. That's one thing. But when it's one of these professionals who, like in a professional capacity, they get invited to come to these things, they're privileged to be there, and then they come out one of the first things. And listen, Rob, I love Variety. I think Variety is one of the best outlets out there. They're fantastic. I read Variety every day. They're one of the 6 or 7 outlets that I read every single day. They're great. But like last night, 2 of the senior reporters from Variety, it's not on Variety's official Twitter channel, but 2 of the senior reporters for Variety come out of Eternals last night and they start posting like significant big spoilers. We've complained before about outlets like Forbes once in a while, and I really like Forbes too, but Forbes, writing their reviews and just layering their review with spoilers, like before the movie ever comes out. And it really does drive me crazy. And I actually tweeted about this either this morning or last night. Because Rob, I remember back when I first started doing this thing, when I would go to these advanced screenings, they literally made us stop and sign a contract. We literally had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And you violate that, you can be subject to civil litigation. You can lose your house, you can lose your car if you violate the agreement. And I'll tell you what, after seeing like professionals, because those of us who are in a position like us where we get lucky to go to these things, to then violate that trust and spoil big surprises, spoil the enjoyment for a lot of film fans and everything like that, it drives me crazy. And I'll tell you what, I am all for studios reinstituting that thing where, okay, you work for one of these outlets, yeah, sign this contract, and let's see you go out and spoil it after you sign this this legally binding non-disclosure agreement. Let's see you violate it now. I almost feel like that's what they should do. It's really frustrating for me because I see people who are supposed to be like pundits of this space, advocates for this space, professionals in this space, then jump on and just intentionally, flagrantly spoil the enjoyment. And Rob, what else is movie going except going to enjoy the experience? And then these pros come out and purposefully subvert that all for a few clicks. It drives me crazy. I don't know, Rob, do you think I'm overreacting here when I say reinstitute the non-disclosure agreement? Because you know me, I don't care about spoilers all that much personally, but fans who really like this stuff and look forward to this stuff, I just hate it when the supposed pros ruin it for people. Am I over-exaggerating or am I overreacting by saying reinstitute the signed NDA contract? I don't know. What do you think?
No, I don't think so. The studios release when you can and can't release an in-depth review. That's why there's embargoes. And when it comes to things like the Marvel movies, now this is what, Marvel movie number 26?
Something like that, yeah.
And Spider-Man's 27. We all know that, for instance, I'm lucky I didn't see people spoiled. I guess there's 2 end credit scenes in this movie.
There are.
And people already spoiled them. And I'm like, here's the thing. To me, the post-credit scenes of Marvel movies serve 2 functions. One, they're usually both a postscript to what you've just seen. So 1 or 2 of the sequences might not make sense if you haven't watched the movie. So post-credit scenes are the final ending of the movie you've just seen. And then there's usually a setup for something new, you know? And to me, to have both of those scenes spoiled significantly diminishes the enjoyment of Marvel movies because you anticipate the end scenes. You know, what are they going to be? You know, they're literally like presents on Christmas morning. You've already had this great Christmas morning, and then there's a little extra added nuggets of Marvel goodness that they're giving you that serve to make you go whoa, and then set up excitement like, oh my God, I can't wait to see whatever. And to me, they're as much a part of a Marvel movie as anything else. So why literally have your ending? I was calling the ending endings. The ending endings get spoiled. Why would you do that? Like, why would anyone do that to end?
Oh, I think
it's one thing if we do
back.
spoiler Saturdays or whatever. If something drops on Netflix or a Marvel show drops on Disney Plus on Wednesday, and the following weekend we do a spoiler show, it's usually labeled so people can decide whether or not they want to delve into it before they've seen the movie or not. But to go out on social media and weaponize a spoiler, and sometimes, you know, you're just scrolling up Twitter and you see something, you're like, what? Come on, man. And then, you know, maybe it's your fault for being on social media. But I was lucky. I have not been spoiled yet, but I don't like it. I mean, why do you have to be a destroyer of joy?
Yeah, it just it's frustrating again, especially Rob, as people who are in a position where we get lucky, we get to go to see these things early, and people like us should not be spoiling things. I don't know, it just frustrates me a little bit. By the way, somebody in the live chat is asking if Angelina Jolie was there. Angelina Jolie was there last night, as a matter of fact,
with all of her kids.
With all of her kids, and like, oh my God, we're like, you want to feel a little old? seeing how grown up her kids are, seeing how big all of her kids are now. It's kind of crazy. But we're walking down the carpet and Ann stops and goes, just look right beside you. I'm like, what? And that's Angela. Like, I know you can't tell from the picture. You just have to believe me. I was like standing right behind Angelina Jolie. And it's like, so I snapped this picture and then just kept on moving a little bit. So yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time. Anyway, guys, who cares about all that? Let's get into the stuff we're here to talk about here today, shall we? And here's how today's show is going to go. We break it into two parts. The first half of the show, we talk about some predetermined topics. And then the second half of the show, we take your live comments and questions. If you'd like to get a live comment or question to be read on the show or an upcoming companion video, simply go down into the description of this video. You'll see a tip link. Click on that there or enter it in manually at www.streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your comment or question read on a show. Of course, it's appropriate for our show. And of course, you'll be supporting the channel at the same time. And all of us here at the show, thank you guys so much for your support. One other bit of housekeeping, guys. Don't forget, if you need your daily fix of the John Campea Show, you can't be in front of a YouTube channel. Good news. There's the audio-only podcast version of the show. The John Campea Show podcast is what we call it. Just hop on your favorite podcasting app of choice, search for the John Campea Show podcast, and subscribe to it today so the podcast will be there for you when you need it. Okay, guys. With that down, let's get into main topic number one. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Mike, who writes, "Hey, John, big fan of your show." Thank you so much, Mike. "So with Disney delaying several MCU films, Black Panther 2 is now releasing 1 week after The Flash. Do you think there is enough room for both of these films to succeed? And if you don't, which one do you think will move? Thank you very much, and bring on the filthy." All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, you guys will remember, on yesterday's episode of the John Campea Show, we were talking about the fact that Disney had just announced that they were moving a whole bunch of their release dates. And they were shifting a whole bunch of them. And I don't know that it was literally all of them, Rob, but it was a lot of them, almost all of them. And of course, Indiana Jones got moved too by a full year. A couple of the other ones like Thor and Doctor Strange too, they got moved by single-digit weeks. So not that big of a deal. But that is big. But one of the outcomes of that bump was the fact that, and we didn't talk about it yesterday because I didn't realize it yesterday, is that now Black Panther 2 is releasing the very next week after Flash is opening up. This comes to us from the folks over at Comic Book Movie that write, "It will be Marvel versus DC at the box office when Black Panther Wakanda Forever and The Flash open up 1 week apart in November of 2022. The Walt Disney Studios on Monday announced a scheduling shift to movies dated through 2023, delaying anticipated Marvel Studios sequels, Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness, Thor, Love and Thunder, The Marvels, and Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Also on the move is Disney Lucasfilm's Indiana Jones 5, pushed from July 29th of 2022 to June 30th of 2023, of course, making it 15 years since the release of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. The Harrison Ford starring final chapter of the storied franchise avoids Dwayne Johnson's DC movie Black Adam, still set for July 29th of 2022. So, Rob, we find ourselves in this situation now where, I've always said, I think people overthink the idea when two big movies open in the same month. I've always thought you can open two big movies 2 weeks apart, and I think you're fine. I think you're totally fine. I mean, really, a movie makes a lion's share of its money in the first 2 weeks anyway. By the time you get into the third week, most people who want to see that movie have seen it, and now all the other viewings are, for the most part, going to be second and third viewings, and they're still going to do that even if another big movie opens. But Rob, 1 week apart? That's no good. We've seen several times when a potentially really big movie opens and then another monster movie in the same kind of demographic opens 1 week after. It hurts both of them. There have been a couple of very rare examples, Rob, when it can work and both do okay, but really it'll hurt both of them, and quite often it'll hurt one a lot more than the other. And now we've got a situation where this Flash movie, which has been delayed many times, and now Black Panther 2 are now opening just 1 week apart. So the question becomes, do I think one of these two are going to move? Hell yes. I think one of them's going to move, Rob. I cannot see it. This is because not only is it roughly the same demographic, these are two comic book movies. These are two highly anticipated comic book movies. And I just don't think it's good for either Flash to try to open up big opening weekend, great, and then have your second weekend killed, or Black Panther having your opening weekend compromised by the fact that it's only going to be the Flash's second weekend. Like, I think Black Panther 2 will weather the storm better than Flash does, but it's not good for Black Panther 2 either. I think one of them are going to move. And Rob, as has happened in the past, and as I think will happen again, I think ultimately it will be DC that moves. It's happened before. We've seen this before, Rob, where we've had two significant, a DC and a Marvel movie opening up really close or on the same day, and one of them moves. One of them has to. It's just good business sense. And I really do think Flash is going to move for two reasons. One, Black Panther is the more successful franchise right now when it comes to the theaters. Yes. I mean, there's just no getting around that. It just is. That's not up for debate. Everybody knows this. The second reason why I think it'll be the Flash is because DC or Marvel, I should say, just moved to that date yesterday. Which means that means they moved there knowing that the Flash was coming out the week before. They're not going to move again. So I think one will move. And by the way, I don't think it's a sign of weakness that you move either. It's just a sign that you've got good business sense. So I think DC will do the good business move, Rob. I think they will make the smart decision. They will move Flash out there, at least move it 2 weeks away from Black Panther. Maybe they only nudge it 1 week. Maybe they move it to another month entirely. I don't know. Rob, you take a look at the situation. Number one, do you think they can, honestly, do you think they can both stay in their dates and maybe still do perfectly fine? Or do you think that one of them needs to move? And if so, which one do you think moves?
Well, obviously, Black Panther 2 Wakanda Forever has $1 billion film that it's following up. So it's the 900-pound gorilla in the room. It's if anything, I'd want to move away from that movie, just as a matter of policy. So I think after this big shift that happened yesterday, Warner Brothers is reassessing when The Flash is going to come out, because you know what? They also know they have something pretty special in The Flash. If all of these reports of the multiverse and Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck and everything, that's going to be a big movie too. And I would think it would be academic that you don't want to be in the second week shadow of the second Black Panther movie. So I honestly think The Flash will move. And, this was a surprise. Even last night on the red carpet, Kevin Feige was asked, I was watching the event live, he was asked about these date changes. Kevin Feige's like, well, I didn't know they were going to do the announcement today when a reporter like yourself could come ask me about it. So he clearly was not appraised of that situation, that they were at least going to make that announcement today. I'm sure he could have wished they waited until tomorrow, not when he's on a red carpet being peppered with conversations from reporters from everywhere around the globe. And when he said that, I found that surprising, which to me, John, speaks to, one more thing Bob Chapek has done that isn't good.
Oh yeah, don't forget, under Bob Iger, Feige got a lot of influence and a lot of say on when these movies came out. Kevin Feige no longer has any say on when these movies come out. He doesn't even get a say on where they come out. Kevin Feige doesn't have that power anymore. It's under Bob Chapek.
At least you could see nobody works the press better than Kevin Feige does.
Yep.
But you could see even in his mind, he's like, great. I'm sure he was dreading going to the premiere because he knows the genre press, people like us, would ask him these questions. And it's like, it shows a lack of consideration at the top at Disney, where here you're releasing, another film that you've got your Oscar-winning director releasing one of your big franchise properties. Don't you think you would want to give that movie a wide berth and allow the world premiere to go off without a hitch? And yet, nope. Earlier in the day, you have to provide something that completely overshadows the moment. That, to me, is bad leadership. And it was one more example of something Bob Chapek allowed to happen. Or if he didn't allow it to happen, then he wasn't aware it was happening, was an idiot.
Yeah, by the way, I just want to point out again, I've been to a bunch of these premieres. Well, I go to a lot of premieres for different studios, but I've been to a lot of the Disney ones. Bob Iger was always there. He was always there supporting his filmmakers, supporting the talent that was making the films, supporting these projects. I have now been to 2 in the Bob Chapek era. He hasn't bothered to show up to either of them. Bob Chapek definitely wasn't there for Shang-Chi because I don't think he wanted to get face-to-face with Simu Liu after the comments that he made. And then again, he wasn't there again last night. So Bob Chapek has no interest in publicly supporting these projects. But in Bob Chapek's defense, though, did John just say he's going to speak in Bob Chapek's defense? Yeah, give me a second here. In Bob Chapek's defense, Rob, and you tell me what you think of this. I actually 100% believe, now granted, Kevin Feige should have been more involved in that process, but I actually believe that I don't think DC was caught by surprise by this. I have a feeling that at some point in the last number of weeks, Disney probably reached out to Warner Brothers and said, hey, look, we've got this situation that is necessitating us to move one of our projects, and it's going to land us the week after Flash. Can we work something out here? Let's come up with some solution here that benefits both of us. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Flash has already decided to move release dates again. And like they said, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll be good moving to this month. You go ahead and take that one or the work. I have a feeling, Rob, that DC and Warner Brothers at least discuss this in advance. Am I being overly utopian and thinking everything is kumbaya and handshakes? Or do you think maybe this caught DC off guard? What do you think?
I think it probably did catch them off guard. I think it caught kind of everybody off guard. But the thing is, it's not, for a studio to decide they're bumping their whole slate. And by the way, Kevin Feige addressed why. He did say,
yes, he did.
It was production issues. And I think production issues maybe because of IATSE could have been part of it, or, just there's all kinds of supply chain issues. There's labor problems. I think he was being genuine when he said there's production issues, and rather than rack up huge costs to work 24 hours a day, they figured, you know what, it's probably cheaper for us just to bump the movies. We're going to be okay.
By the way, no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think that Warner Brothers was probably caught unaware, but it's not like it's some state secret or anything. I think, okay, Warner Brothers is like, we have plenty of time to adjust our own schedule accordingly.
I should shout out to one of our viewers in the live chat, Ryan, who makes a good point to counter my point. He said, you think Bob Chapek reached out to DC? Dude, the guy didn't even talk to Kevin Feige. That's a good point, Ryan. I got to give you that. That's a good point. Anyway, guys, the question is for you. What do you think about this situation? Do you think The Flash and Black Panther 2 can open just 1 week apart from each other without damaging either of their box offices? I personally don't think so. Maybe you do. Do you think one of them moves? If so, which one do you think moves? Wherever you are on this, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. And by the way, a bunch of people have been sending in super chat badges in the live chat. I just want to give a shout out and a thank you to you guys. So Kevin Cow sends in a super chat badge, Taylor Haywood, Savage McFilthy, Rampage Predacon, one of my favorite names on there. Eli sends in like a $10 super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, Eli. Picky Picks, I like that username too, also sends them in. Thank you so much, guys, for your support. We appreciate that very much. Okay, guys, with that down, let's move now into main topic number 2, shall we? I almost held up 3 fingers there. Meant 2. Number 2. Rob, what is our second main topic today?
Ooh, this is a good one. Derek says, hey, John, the Hollywood Reporter just announced that Mel Gibson, like we said yesterday, I couldn't believe this. This came over the transom, John, while we were on the show. Mel Gibson is the first actor signed on to the John Wick prequel. What do you think of Mel Gibson joining the Continental? Of course, movie website. Well, first of all, I think this is kind of bonkers. It's a series, and I don't think Mel Gibson has ever done an American TV series before.
Oh, that's a really good point. I'm not
sure, because like the first movie I remember seeing him in, obviously was Mad Max, and then he did Gallipoli. So I don't know if he's ever been in an American television series. But the fact that they hired look, I've always loved, despite his issues, like so many people in their lives have issues. Robert Downey Jr. got over his issues. I have always been a huge Mel Gibson fan. I met him back in the day on the set of Lethal Weapon 3 a couple of times. Everyone loved him. He was, I've loved his movies. I've loved the movies he's directed. I've loved him as an actor all the way back into the late 70s when I first saw him. I'm a huge fan of Mel Gibson, but the fact that he's doing this, I mean, who doesn't love the John Wick universe? And I've they've been talking about making this Continental series forever. But MovieWeb says Mel Gibson has joined the cast of the John Wick prequel series, The Continental, as a character named Cormac. The 3-part series will be set in 1975 in New York, where Winston Scott is forced to face the past he believed he had long since left behind as he attempts to take control of the notorious hotel, which already has a reputation as a meeting place of the world's most dangerous criminals in the world. Winston must negotiate a course through the dark and deadly underworld of New York City, which makes it sound like the series will definitely be carrying over the tone of the John Wick movies. You know what, John? I didn't know that was what it was about. That sounds great to me. It's a period piece set in 1975 New York. Bring it on. A 3-episode miniseries or whatever. That's like a movie. Mel Gibson should direct it. That sounds awesome. What do you think?
I remember not long ago when there was word that there was going to be another Suicide Squad movie, that before James Gunn, remember, they were negotiating with Mel Gibson to direct a Suicide Squad movie. I remember everybody saying, like, love or hate Mel Gibson, for whatever legitimate reasons you love or hate Mel Gibson. Everybody had to acknowledge that would have been, to use the word again, Rob, bonkers. That a Mel Gibson directed Suicide Squad movie would have been bonkers. I really liked his appearance in when he played the actual villain for the Expendables. I thought he was menacing and all that kind of stuff. If he can bring that to this, I think that could be pretty interesting. Look, I'll just go back to the first John Wick film. And because I remember watching the first John Wick film saying, I could watch an entire movie. You go back to I believe if you go back to my initial review, I even said this in the first John Wick, I could watch an entire movie about the hotel. You do just an entire movie about the background, the mythology of the Continental. I'm there. And the Continental, Rob, has been a predominant character. This location has been a character in this John Wick franchise so far. And it's every time they go a little bit deeper into the mythology of it, went a little bit off the rails a bit in John Wick 3, but still, I've just grown more and more fascinated by it. I am curious about the 3-episode series. Okay, that's kind of neat, I guess. So I think if nothing else, Rob, I think everybody can agree that this is a very interesting choice. I think everybody can agree it's a very interesting choice. Now, what I'm left wondering is who's going to be playing the young, I believe the character's name is Winston. I think who's going to be playing the younger version of him. That I am now going to be very, very curious about. I'm going to be dying to see who they're going to get that. I'm assuming Cormac is probably going to be the antagonist of the film, of the series, played by Mel Gibson. So if nothing else, it's going to get people talking for good and bad reasons. And if nothing else, it's a very interesting choice. Question is for you guys. What do you think about this? Mel Gibson is joining the John Wick universe in the Continental prequel series. Good move, bad move, fascinating move, terrible decision. I don't know. Whatever you guys are thinking, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. By the way, we've had a few more super chat badges come in from Bede Gill Studio sends one in. Thank you, B. Gill. Robert Paul does. Dwayne Jackson sends one in. Rhett Proctor sends in a super chat badge, like a $10 super chat badge. Thank you, Rhett Proctor. Thank you guys so much to all of you for supporting our channel that way. We appreciate it, guys. Okay. With that down, let's now move into main topic number 3. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by George Harris. And George Harris writes, Gio, that's short for my real name, which is Giovanni. The Eternals movie premiere was last night, and you filthy dog, got to go. How was the movie? Was it as good as your sources of Marvel said it was? Also, when you go to a premiere as a media member, how do you enter the theater? Do you get to walk the red carpet, or do they have another entrance for the unwashed masses? Do they make you get there earlier than the stars of the movie? Thanks, and bring on the filthy. All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. Well, let's address the last part of that first, because it's an interesting question. Like, when you do attend to these premieres, how do you enter? Here's what my experience has been. Generally speaking, you show up, you go to the will call that shows, you were an invited guest. You show them your ID, you get a badge. and all that kind of stuff. And then you enter the carpet. And for the most part, you walk the same carpet that the stars do. Now, what normally happens is that there will be a part of the carpet that everybody can walk down, right? But then there'll be a little like roped off area that if you're not one of the big celebrities, you walk behind this roped area, because that roped area will be for a stretch of the red carpet where the press are. So where all the photographers are and all the people doing interviews. And so they want to reserve that space just for the celebrities coming down that part of the carpet. And you're still walking down the carpet. You're just at the edge of it, walking behind like this rope, right? So you walk down there. That's where you saw that picture that I put up a little bit earlier of me being behind. Let me see if I can bring this up again, of me like when I was standing right behind Angelina Jolie, because we were at that part of the carpet where press are to interview the celebrities, and I just walk at the edge of the carpet behind a rope. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm standing right behind Angelina Jolie. Click. And
right.
Like a tourist, like a pathetic tourist, I took a picture. But then once you get past the press area, there's like a display part of the red carpet where they'll have like the big banners and some of the costumes on display and some different things. And that's where the two parts of the carpet then merge, and then you're walking right. Like I have literally walked into a premiere literally making sure I don't step on the back of Harrison Ford's shoes. Like I've literally walked into a premiere right behind Harrison Ford, walking behind him down the hallway and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so for the most part, you do walk the carpet. There's just a part of it that's a little bit segregated so that the celebrities can get, the press can get to the celebrities and do that interview stuff without confusing the press or causing too much of a roadblock. So there's that. Anyway, hopefully you found that interesting. If not, so be it. As far as the movie goes, I put up my out of the theater reaction, which wasn't exactly out of the theater because, Rob, I shot my out of the theater reaction there, but it was so loud you could barely hear my audio. So I had to wait till I got back home, record my reaction. I put it up online. You're seeing some of these key phrases thrown around, and I totally endorse these key phrases that everybody seems to be using because they're absolutely accurate. It is dense. You're going to hear that word a lot. There is so much mythology packed into this movie that I still feel, Rob, you and I were talking before the show started today. I still feel like I'm unpacking a lot of it. I still feel like I'm processing the movie, right? And I don't mean that as a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying I am still processing a lot of what I saw.
Sure.
The second thing you're going to hear a lot about, it is probably the most unique. And look, every MCU film tries to make itself very different from other MCU films. But at the end of the day, they still, even though they're very unique from each other, they still feel like MCU films. This movie does not feel like a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. It feels like a Chloe Zhao movie. And that's hard to quantify in words. You just got to see the movie and you'll know what I mean. And to be honest, I don't know how average Marvel movie-going fans will respond to that because, like I said, all the Marvel movies do a great job of making themselves very unique and individual, but at the end of the day, you still can tell it feels like a Marvel movie still. This doesn't feel like a Marvel movie to me. And you can take that however you want. It doesn't feel like a Marvel movie to me.
Why do you say that, though? Because I've seen a lot of people online say it. What about it doesn't feel like a Marvel movie? The way it's shot or...
Dude, it's while the reaction embargo has been lifted, the review embargo has not. So I can't get into details. I mean, you'll see later tonight, my friend. You'll see it for yourself. But I mean, it's just the nature of the story. The fact that I'm trying to stay as totally ambiguous as possible. The nature of the story, the depth of the characters, the history, the mythology, and Rob, a bigger scope than anything the MCU has ever done. A far bigger scope. To the point, Rob, that I even put on Twitter today that the scope of this movie is so big that it almost makes all of the rest of the MCU and everything that's happened in the MCU up to this point seem trite and meaningless. That's how vast the scope of this thing is. It's incredible. Look, I will just tell you this. I immensely enjoyed myself. Like watching this, I felt like this is a movie that I think even Marty Scorsese would go and sit down and come out and say, that was cinema. Like, I really do. I feel like Scorsese would come out of this movie, who has, traditionally been very critical of comic book films. I think Scorsese would come out of this movie and go, that's cinema. But I am still processing, and I need to see it again tonight. And that's why you guys don't know. So I was telling Rob before the show started today that I am dying for him to see this so I can just talk to him about it and all this kind of stuff. But let's go over and see what some other people have been saying about Eternals, shall we? Here's some of the other early reactions that we got from Eternals. We've got our friend Eric Davis. I love Eric Davis. Eric Davis writes, Marvel's Eternals is spectacularly weird and rich with a new MCU mythology that makes it feel separate from everything else. It's honestly refreshing. There's a bittersweetness to the film that you feel in its sunset shots, a definite Chloe Zhao touch. It's soulful and thoughtful. You don't often hear terms like that when talking about an MCU movie, right? All right, so we go on to Chrissy Haymore writes, I saw a movie tonight, Eternals. Is cool as hell. Drags a bit in the second act. I disagree with that, but I went in knowing nothing about this movie, and I walked out a fan. Next one comes to us from Perry Nemiroff, who of course I've worked with. Eternals is dense. There's that word I told you you're probably going to hear a lot of. Eternals is dense, and I felt the weight of the exposition often. The movie's at its best when the focus is on the Eternals recreating their family. The humor of it and the passion when they fight for each other and everything they love. Also, Angelina in the MCU is everything. I loved Angelina Jolie in this, by the way. Jack McBrien writes, Eternals is epic in every sense of the word. It's a story that is more massive, but simultaneously more down to earth than the MCU has ever been. The passion with everyone involved had for this movie is present in every scene, and it needs to be seen on the biggest screen you can find. I completely agree with that, because Rob, cinematography-wise, I think this is also the most beautiful MCU film I've seen. You got to see it on the biggest screen possible. Let's see. Aaron Couch writes, Eternals, wow, a lot to unpack. I use that word myself, unpack. If Marvel movies are a Venn diagram, variations with the overlap, this movie is off the charts, hands down the most different of any of their films. Geek Vibe Nations writes, fresh off her Oscar win, Chloe Zhao doesn't miss a step with Marvel's Eternals. Eternals is one of the most visually stunning comic films we've seen. Zhao has a great eye for detail, and we see that with her set pieces and character designs, which pays homage to the comics. Last one we'll read here comes from Anthony, who writes, Chloe Zhao's Eternals is absolutely fantastic. The cookie cutter Marvel template is thrown out the window, and you're given an enthralling experience, a must watch this year. Cersei, Icarus, Kingo, Athena, Phastos, Druig, all that kind of stuff. So you're hearing it. And Rob, I think what a lot of people and myself, like my wife straight up asked me last night, Rob, she goes, okay, but did you prefer this or Shang-Chi? I'm like, oh God, they are two such fundamentally different movies that are trying to deliver two fundamentally different experiences. If I had my shoulders pressed against the wall and I had to pick one, I think right now I lean towards Shang-Chi. But this is just, you can tell I'm still struggling with how to unpack the whole thing. It's just so weird and different. I will say this, I'll tell everybody this. There is a scene late in the movie that has one of the worst CGI shots I've seen in a long time. I'm just going to throw that out there. When you guys see the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, quite an experience. Anyway, Rob, your thoughts, questions you have that I might be able to address or answer?
Well, I mean, the thing that people are saying that I really enjoy is that Marvel is breaking free of their formula. And I think that's great. I mean, Chloe Zhao also, she talked about wanting to shoot on location, and I think people are really responding to that. I mean, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is, they shoot a lot of it on green screen, they shoot a lot of it in Atlanta, and that's fine. But to be able to go out and have a film, I mean, you can tell from the trailers, it's shot on location in a lot of areas. There's probably a lot more texture to it than we're used to. I'm looking forward to that. And for Marvel to have because they have the security now with what they've been able to accomplish, that they can go out and do these innovative things, I think it can only be great for their brand. And hopefully they'll be able to go do more of that kind of thing. And the fact that this is so different, I'm just excited to see it. Because, I love comic book adaptations, and I've been reading comic books my whole life, and the Celestials, the idea of the Celestials, it's very big sci-fi Jack Kirby ideas. We had a lot of that with Ragnarok, and I can't wait to see more of that with this. So I'm just excited, man.
Tell you what, I don't personally consider telling you guys something that is not, and not something that you should never have thought was in the movie. So I don't mind telling you guys something that's not in the movie, something that you never should have even thought was. If you don't even want to hear something that's not in the movie, I don't know how some people say telling you something that's not in the movie is a spoiler. It's not. But I'm going to put up my hand right now because I'm going to tell you something that is not in the movie, okay? So hit mute, and then when I put my hand down, that's when you can unmute, okay? But I feel like, because I'm seeing some people spreading this around online, and just to let you know so you don't get your expectations cued, okay? So hit mute if you don't want to hear about something that's not in the movie, all right? Ready? I've given you a warning. Okay, here we go. There's no X-Men in the movie, okay? There are no X-Men. I saw some people running around writing a line saying the X-Men get introduced in Eternals. There are no X-Men nor references to the X-Men in this movie, okay? Got that? So if you hear that, know it's bullshit and don't get your expectations set for that. So, okay, ready? Done talking about it. Hand is going down. There, you can unmute now. There we go. Okay. So, yeah, guys, look, by the way, when we saw the cast for this movie, I didn't quite know what to make of the cast, other than the fact that, holy crap, they got Angelina Jolie and Salma Hayek in the same thing, and Gemma Chan. I love Gemma Chan, but she was already in the MCU. She was in Captain Marvel, but they brought her back again in a totally different character. Yeah, and I will tell you this too. We heard, because Rob, you and I were talking about this, we had heard Kevin Feige kind of suggest at one point that this movie, that you could kind of consider Gemma Chan as the lead of this movie. There's no almost maybe about it. Gemma Chan is the lead of this movie. She's absolutely the lead. I mean, every character in the Eternals gets good, significant story and screen time. They all do. It's a very balanced film. But I think almost everybody walking out of the theater, if you were to ask them, who do you think was the lead character? I think pretty much everybody would say it was probably Gemma Chan. It's not that she has head and shoulders more content than everybody else. It's just that clearly she's the one who was the lead. So, and she's great in it. She's great in it. Salma Hayek is great in it. The guy who plays Gilgamesh, I can't remember the actor's name, the guy from Train to Busan who plays Gilgamesh is great. Oh my God, Kumail Nanjiani is awesome in this movie. Kumail Nanjiani is so great in this movie. I have been a big fan of Kumail Nanjiani's ever since his movie The Big Sick. Even when he's in a terrible movie like Stuber, and oh my God, that movie sucks. But even when he's in a terrible movie like Stuber, I really like Kumail Nanjiani, and he shines. But every character is great. Anyway, yeah, I can't go into specifics or anything like that. Once the review embargo lifts and we can do our full actual review, and we can talk a little bit more in depth about the story structures and what happens in Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 without getting spoilery. I look forward to doing that, and I cannot wait to do the open spoiler discussion of this next month. But yeah, there's that. And Rob, I cannot wait for you to watch this movie tonight. I'm really looking forward to watching it with you.
I can't wait either.
All right, guys, question is for you. Now that you're hearing all this stuff about Eternals, where does that do to your expectation level? Like, I can see some people getting their expectations drop because they really like the feel and the DNA of the MCU films. Every film, like, I don't think there's an MCU formula, but there's a DNA to them, right? And this one is very contrary to that DNA. And for, I think, some people, that's going to lessen their excitement for it. Maybe you're somebody who's been looking for Marvel to really do something wildly out of left field for them, and maybe that'll increase your excitement. I don't know. How are you guys feeling about this right now? Whatever it is, jump down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With all that down, let's move on and start taking your live comments and questions today, shall we? And we're going to get things started off here with James Saunders, who writes, in regards to which Batman will appear in the Batgirl movie, maybe we're wrong in assuming that it's Bruce Wayne Batman, but could instead be Dick Grayson, as he has a lot of personal history with her and allows for a new casting in a lower budget movie. I like the way you're thinking, James, but Robert, I'll tell you why I don't believe that's what they're doing at all. If you're introducing a non-Bruce Wayne Batman into your mainline DCEU timeline, which we know this is because Deadline, again, yesterday confirmed that it is J.K. Simmons, Commissioner Gordon, so the same Commissioner Gordon that's been in the DCEU. If you're going to introduce a brand new Batman, you don't do that as a secondary character on somebody else's show. So I can't see them making Dick Grayson the Batman in the Batgirl show. Rob, what do you think? Could the Batman in the Batgirl show be Dick Grayson?
Well, I mean, it could be, but I'm with you. I don't think it is. And if they're introducing J.K. Simmons, I would assume that Batgirl's in the Snyderverse.
Yes, that's what's implied for sure.
So if that's in the Snyderverse, wouldn't we see Ben Affleck as Batman?
Or does Flashpoint change that and is it Michael Keaton's Batman? Or does it change it again and it's somebody else's? I mean, I don't know, but I don't think it'll be Dick Grayson. I can't see them making a big move like that and then making him a minor character in somebody else's show. So I don't know. All right, next up, Alex J writes, Kadurham is now bisexual. That's the character from Young Justice. That's the Aqualad character, right? Is now bisexual as well. It doesn't stop me from enjoying the character or Young Justice. Comics have always reflected their era, to be honest. Looking at the 80s versus now. No, you're absolutely right. And one of the things, when you read the book or listen to the book called Slugfest, the 70-year war between DC and Marvel, I can't remember the subtitle, but when you read that and you get into all the stuff about Stan Lee, Stan Lee was very clear. He said that the key mark of when Marvel really began to dominate was when he considered that DC characters were too out of touch. At the time, going back decades, Stan Lee at the time felt like the DC characters, while they were dominating, they were just all too godlike. They were all too out of touch. And so Stan Lee felt it was really important. And I never knew about this in this kind of detail as the way it's explained in the book. But he said the big key was to making them feel more real to the average reader. And so you had like this shocking stuff where like a comic book character was struggling with drug use. They actually had problems in their dating life. They had struggles at work. And everything about Stan Lee at that time and trying to bring Marvel in to compete with DC and eventually kind of overtake them was the whole notion of making them more reflect the world that the readers themselves live in. And so on that level, I completely agree with you, Alex. Comics have always reflected the eras that they're in, especially when it gets to the era of Stan Lee and Marvel. So it's a good observation. All right, next up. An anonymous viewer writes, "Hey, John, I am a huge Rush fan. Who's not? Nobody could hit the notes like Geddy Lee, and Neil Peart was a master of the drums. Dude, he was probably the greatest drummer of all time. What are your thoughts?" Rob, Rush, man. Rush. Like, and obviously, look, good Canadian kids, Rush, obviously. But even I'll admit, as much as I love Rush, I never thought Geddy Lee was the best singer. He's an incredible bass player, an amazing bassist, but I never thought he was the greatest singer. But Rob, did you ever see the Aqua Teen Hunger Force animated movie that came out like 12 or 13 years ago? Did you ever see that?
I did not.
So there's a scene in it where there's this alien character, right? And somebody had died, and I can't remember the exact circumstances, but basically this alien character travels around with Neil Peart, the drummer for Rush. And Neil Peart in the Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie is so good that he has drum solos that can raise the dead back to life. And so you hear the alien yell, "Neil, the drum solo of life!" And then Neil Peart plays his drum solo and brings the dead back to life. It's just pretty awesome. Of course, the greatness of Rush is kind of like the backbone of that great comedy with Paul Rudd and Jason Segel called I Love You, Man. Like that was the whole kind of part of that. So I don't know, Rob, did you ever listen to Rush? Were you a Rush fan?
Dude, come on. Of course. I remember buying Permanent Waves at my local drugstore.
It's a new world.
And dude, 2112, I mean, that was like, you couldn't be like a sci-fi movie fan and not own 2112. I mean, you had to have it. It was like there were albums as a youth that if they weren't in your collection, you you were no good to anyone. And that was one of the albums.
And a red comment in the live chat is saying, slapping the bass. Yep, there's
slapping the bass.
Slap the bass from Levy Man. Okay, let's keep moving on here. Jody Harkavy writes, I keep forgetting to put my name on the top. No problem. I'm the Rush fan. Just wanted to say hi. Thanks for all you do and bring on the filthy. No problem, Jody. Thanks for sending that in, dude. An anonymous viewer also writes, John, I know you have said that there is evidence that points to Spider-Man leaving the MCU, but I think there's evidence supporting him staying in the MCU. Number one, Tom Holland's inclusion in the new Disneyland ride. That's irrelevant. I'll tell you why that's irrelevant in a second. Two, Sony and Disney Plus's streaming deal. Again, that's irrelevant. That has nothing to do with Spider-Man. Thoughts? Okay, so here's the thing, Anonymous. I don't say that there is evidence, like factual evidence that says Spider-Man is leaving the MCU and going to Sony. I think there's anecdotal evidence. Like, I think it just kind of makes sense when you look at all the things that have happened. But there's absolutely arguments to be made for him staying in the MCU as well. Like, I've always said that. Like, I believe ever since the D23, just after D23, and they announced the new deal, I thought back then, and I think now, that the new deal was exclusively made to set up a smooth transition of Spider-Man out of the MCU. And recent events have only furthered me believing that. But that doesn't mean that I think that's fact and that there's no possible way Spider-Man stays in the MCU. Not at all, Rob. I think there's definitely a possibility that Spider-Man stays in MCU. If I had to put $1 on it, I would bet that he's leaving. But I wouldn't put $100 on that because I do think there's a chance he stays. But Rob, when he's saying that, hey, look, they've got the Tom Holland Spidey-Man feature at Disneyland now. You got to understand that theme park deals are completely separate from actual film deals.
Yeah.
Like, you can get, like, Universal has themes in their parks that are not Universal movie properties. And because, again, the theme park deals are completely set. There's a reason why Harry Potter Land is at Universal, even though Harry Potter is not a Universal film. And there's many other examples like that. So that doesn't really mean anything. Also, the streaming deal is completely different. Studios sign streaming deals. It doesn't mean that they're on screen, they're going to have Spider-Man in their things. It doesn't mean that at all. So you can't look at those. I do think there are other legitimate arguments for him staying in the MCU. I really do. I don't think those are either of them. Because even if he stays, Rob, that had nothing to do with the theme park deal. Even if he stays in the MCU, that had nothing to do with the streaming pact, I don't believe. But Rob, where are you right now? Because we're getting closer and closer to No Way Home. Where are you right now on your thoughts on whether or not Tom Holland's Spider-Man stays in the MCU or he transitions over to the Sonyverse? Where are you thinking right now?
Well, I mean, look, to me, it's all about money and what is going to be the most successful thing for both studios to do. I think that Sony has been poisoning themselves. They're building up their own Spider-Man universe. These Spider-Man movies are still Sony releases, so they're not even entirely, when we talk about, well, Spider-Man's leaving the MCU. No, if anything, Spider-Man is on loan to the MCU from Sony. So we should be thinking, will Sony allow the character to continue to be loaned to Marvel? That would be, I think, a better way to put it. And I think that Sony sees value in having Spider-Man in the MCU. And if they want to continue to loan their property to Marvel, they'll continue to do so. I do think that Sony has had, look, I believe Far From Home was the most successful Spider-Man movie to date. And it was a Sony release. Now they had to renegotiate. I think Marvel gets 25% now, but I think Sony is still like
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Sony's still like, this is a fruitful collaboration. So to me, I wouldn't be surprised if Spider-Man is still loaned out to the Marvel Cinematic Universe because it's good business. Although I could see Sony starting after No Way Home is a great ending point. And if Spider-Man gets trapped over at Sony for a trilogy of movies, that could be cool too. Because I'm sure Kevin Feige will have input because they're making good money. They're doing good business. And that's, after all, that's what it's all about.
All right. Next up, we go to Capri Grant, who writes, "Hey, John and Co. So after watching your show, I think people are forgetting the one issue with Spider-Man leaving the MCU in No Way Home. The Sony Marvel contract stated one movie and one other appearance." That's not exactly what it stated. Avengers 5, Fantastic Four, etc. Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Sony can't do anything with a live-action Spider-Man until their contract is over. No. Also, isn't Disney/Marvel allowed to make half-hour animated Spider-Man episodes regardless? It could continue on Disney Plus if they want. All right, well, there's two completely different issues there, Capri. Now, let's start with the animated thing. Yes. Disney and Marvel have always had, even while Sony was making the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, Disney has always had the rights to make Spider-Man animated movies. They've always had the rights, or Spider-Man animated TV shows. They've always had the rights to make Spider-Man animated TV shows. That wouldn't change. They can't say it's the Tom Holland Spider-Man. They can't do that. But they can make their own iterations of Spider-Man in television. They've always been able to do that. That has never changed. Everybody, Rob, though, always confuses the things about the contracts. The contract simply means that if the studio wants to make a movie that involves that, they can, but they are not obligated to. So there is an understanding out there, which might be incorrect, by the way, but there is a common understanding out there that they have the only films that are left are one, Spider-Man No Way Home, and then one that Spider-Man will appear in somebody else's MCU movie, make an appearance. That may or may not be true. We go on the assumption that it is true. But that doesn't mean Marvel has to do that. That doesn't mean Marvel is obligated to do that. And by the way, just having Spider-Man pop up in another movie, whether it's a Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness or whether it's anything else, that doesn't stop at all the transition from there. It may delay it a bit, or they could still do the transition and then have Spider-Man, because of the way they're setting up the multiverse, Spider-Man could still pop in for one and say hello. Like, Rob, we could theoretically have Spider-Man No Way Home end with Tom Holland's Spider-Man whisked over to the Sonyverse, and that's where he lives now. And then still in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, have him pop up because of some confusion or some whatever, and he pops up for one last hurrah and then right back to the Sonyverse. So there's a lot of possibilities here, but none of this precludes anything. Rob, what do you think this means, the fact that there could be one other appearance? Do you think that kills any movement? Do you think it doesn't kill anything? What do you think?
I don't think anything, like, nothing is set in stone here. It's not like something is sacrosanct and we can't go ahead and make other deals or do other things. I mean, I think one of the joys of this is that anything can happen. I mean, you can make a deal and you can do anything you want. Like, it's such a weird, the idea that, well, it has to be this way. They made this deal and this is the only thing that's going to happen and nothing else can happen. It just doesn't, that's not life, you know? It isn't life. You can make a new deal. There's always another deal to be made.
There's always another deal to be made.
It ain't show friends, John. It's show business.
Show business. All right. Next up, Roll of the Egg writes, "Hey, John and Co. I have two Hulu shows to offer. One, I started Dope Sick. I definitely got to watch that. Like, I am on board for that. I want to see Dope Sick. I've been interested in it ever since the first teaser dropped for it a while ago. To see Rosario Dawson, the show is well made. Think Chernobyl. Caitlin Devers rocks. 2, The Premise, I've not even heard of that one, is a collection of 30-minute weirdly flavored stories. Love your show. Let the filthy come forth." Rob, I know you are also really looking forward to Dope Sick. Have you heard of The Premise? I have not. I've not heard of this. Have you?
It's about the opioid epidemic. And it's all about how the pharmaceutical company that pushed opioids on the American people, how they lobbied doctors. They said, this is a miracle pain pill.
Is that the Michael, that's the Michael Keaton? Because isn't Michael Keaton also in Dope Sick?
That's what I mean. That's
Oh
what,
no, I'm talking about the premise. I'm going to say the premise. Like there's the show Dope Sick, and there's the second show, The Premise. I have not heard of the premise.
I thought you were asking what the premise for
of Dope Sick
was.
is. No. I'm familiar with that. I'm just saying, the premise.
The premise is an anthology show that was created by the actor who's in Inglourious Bastards. The premise
Eli
is
Roth?
No, not Eli Roth.
The kid from the guy from The Office.
But it's not Bo Burnham.
The guy from The Office, the guy who was the producer of The Office.
Yes, I think so.
BJ Novak, that's his name.
Yes, BJ
By the
Novak.
way, Poop D Pie and Insomniac both write BJ Novak in the live chat. Thank you guys. Anyway, go ahead, Rob.
So the premise looks at our social media addled world and what different situations that exist. And I believe the pilot episode was about, I think it was BJ Novak's character has made a sex tape. And in the background of the sex tape, there is footage of a cop beating a black man during an arrest. So he has to take.
Why is the guy having sex in front of a cop beating up somebody?
Well, no, it's just in the background through the window.
They're through the window. Okay.
So what ends up happening is that tape becomes evidence in the court case. So BJ Novak has to decide, is it going to be justice? And I don't know if he plays the main character, but of course his sexual prowess is very awkward. So he's being judged in the court as much as the incident with the cop.
Got it.
So, but each episode is different and it deals with that aspect of our modern age. And I heard BJ Novak talking on NPR about it. It sounds great. I really want to see it.
All right. Next up. We got Agent J who writes, Bonjour, Jean, it's Lumiere, the Lumiere Film Festival here in Lyon, and I just saw The Deflowering of Agatha Jospotnik. This is a movie I made up the other day, Rob. I can't remember what I was trying to illustrate.
I'm like, what?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know, imagine there's some movie called, I don't know, The Deflowering of Agatha Jospotnik at the Holtish Hall Film Festival or whatever, something like that. Anyway, from French author Jean-French Rosenvolsingson, quite a good movie. Thanks for recommending. Can't wait for Justice League. Happy giddy up fun now. And I don't know, were you with me when I made that up? I said, what if the new Justice League is just called Justice League? Happy giddy up fun.
No, I don't think so, but that's pretty great.
So thank you for that, Agent J. I'm glad you enjoyed the movie. Angel A writes, does the IATSE strike affect marketing in any way if the strike takes place? And obviously it did not take place, but I mean, Rob, theoretically, it could still happen because even though the union leaders have come to an agreement with the producers, that agreement has to be ratified by the union members. Now, I was talking to a couple of union members because if you read the headlines right now saying, hey, the union is probably going to vote against this. I'm hearing from people in the union, no, it's not going to get voted down. We're going to begrudgingly vote to agree to the deal. And then they can always revisit it in 3 years. But that's what I'm hearing. But I don't know, Rob, like number one, first of all, Angel A, no, it doesn't affect marketing in any way. It affects the logistics, and then the logistics affects the marketing. That's a separate thing altogether. But Rob, you know a lot of people who are connected to the union.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that, a lot of us are unhappy with it, but like my real estate agent says, the sign of a good deal is that everybody's a little bit unhappy.
Right.
But do you think they're unhappy enough from what you're hearing from people? Do you think they're unhappy enough that they would actually vote down the deal that their own leaders negotiated? What do you think?
I'm a little on the fence about that. I've heard a lot of people are not happy, but then again, so many people are always not happy. So I can't really, I've heard a lot of differing opinions, but there's more vitriol than I thought there would be about what they did or didn't get. And I'm surprised by how much bitterness there is. So I think it could go either way, to be honest.
All right. Interesting. All right. Next up, we've got Ethan Holgate who writes, One of three. Hi, John. Love that you had your friend Spencer Brennan on the show. He's, of course, a union member of IATSE. Learning about the problems going on with IATSE and what he had to say about it, and from his perspective, and I can certainly understand the problems and what they want to change. It's definitely not healthy for crew members. They certainly need more reasonably scheduled working hours on a set. But my question is, do you think with this IATSE strike happening, and of course it's not happening for now, could we see a change in movie release dates in the future? Meaning movies with new working hours for crews. Can you see that making films longer to come out? I mean, also, this probably will happen. Not sure if they're a part of the strike, but will movies in the editing process stop along with TV productions, or are they different? Oh, no. Movies would have stopped. And if the strike still happens at some point, which it looks like it's not, but as Rob just pointed out, it could, it affects editing. Yes, it absolutely does. Now, to the point of, does the new deal that lays out, Rob, they never used to get 10 hours turnaround time. Now a minimum of 10-hour turnaround time. So if once the set strikes, you can't start production again for another 10 hours. You have to have a minimum of 10 hours between when you finish and when you start. So that means you can have 14-hour work days, but you can't have a 15-hour work day, because you got to have a minimum of a 10-hour turnaround time, which is something that they did not have before. Rob, you were pointing out the other day that, okay, if you're working, say, 2 hours less a day, that's 10 hours a week.
Yep.
That's like 40 hours in a month. That's like 80 to 100 hours for a standard 2.5 month shoot.
Oh,
that's another week of production.
Yep.
And then post-production people have to have that turnaround time. So you're talking about adding a month of extra production time, which is going to be more expensive. And it will, but I don't think it'll affect release dates, Rob, because these movies are not made 95% of the time. These movies are not made right up to the night before the movie gets released. Like most of the time, these movies are made, done, and then are sitting on a shelf ready to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes a year before the movie ever comes out.
Right.
So I don't really think it'll have that big of an impact on release dates, but it will have a big impact on production and how much these things cost. How do you see it?
No, I think absolutely it will. I know myself, being an independent producer, every day is expensive. And working on micro budgets, you might need another $50,000 a day, depending on how big your film is. That's a lot of money, and I worked on a TV series, and I was directing episodes for that show. We shot for 3 days, and that's it for a half an hour show. And our episodes are budgeted between $200,000 and $250,000. And we only shot 3 days of principal, and then the rest was post. And so you can see how it can rack up. It can get a $50,000 or $75,000 day to go into production is not unusual. So if you're making an independent movie and you're shooting, 5-day weeks, and you shoot for, say, 4 or 5-day weeks, 20 days, that's an extra. That means immediately your schedule is going to go to 24 days. So that's 4 extra days. Where's that $300,000 going to come from?
And that's on small independent projects.
That's on micro budget, tiny. Yeah.
Yep,
so, I mean, and see, here's the thing. That's a lot of what these time frames have been defined by, is how much work needs to get done in the allotted time and how much does it cost. Now, I would then offer that if people are working less hours, hopefully people will work smarter and faster, because there is a lot of, depending on how you plan a film shoot, there
inefficiencies.
Can be, yes, inefficiencies built into that. And I think in another way, I think this kind of change will force a bit of innovation. And I look, it's good. I think it's good all the way around. It's good for the industry, and it's good for everybody working in the industry. So I'm a fan.
All right, let's move on here. Next up, we've got Scott Brown writes, me and my wife binged Handmaids. God, Handmaids is such a good show. It's an excellent show, and Elizabeth Moss is incredible. The show has this ability to piss you off every episode, reminding you that evil men have been using religion to justify their evil since the beginning of its inception. Well, I mean, here's the thing, though, Scott. evil people have been using any good thing, anything, any whether it's teachers or whether it's coaches or whether it's whatever. There have been evil people that take advantage of trusted positions in our society, and that's always been the case. It's always been the case. And so I think it's more than that, but the show is brilliant. I think everybody should watch Handmaid's Tale, to be honest with you. I really think they should. All right, the Super Korean writes, hey, John and Rob. So I just watched Birdman. I love that movie. And 1917, love that movie. And by the way, phenomenal films. But I'm curious to know, how do they do that long shot where the camera just seems to follow them? How can that be achieved? Thanks, and bring on the filthy. Well, Rob, I remember the first time I saw one of those long tracking shots. Not the first time it happened. I just remember the first time I saw it and was cognizant of it. It was for a Nicolas Cage film called Snake Eyes.
Yep.
And you remember that? And
Brian De Palma directed it.
That opening sequence where literally they just plan it out like a play. Where, okay, the actor's got to go from here to here. This has got to happen. This has got to happen. And a camera just follows them along for, I think it was like 7 or 8 minutes. True Detective. Season 1 had a big long tracking shot like that. Children of Men with Michael Caine and what's the name of the lead? I always confuse him. Clive Owen, thank you. I always confuse Clive Owen and Jude Law for some reason. Anyway, that it's near the end of the film in the third act of that movie. There's this huge long tracking shot. 1917 cheated a little bit, Rob. Because 1917 did have some long tracking, but they also used some editing tricks to make it look like a big long tracking shot. So they cheated a bit, but it does happen. It takes a lot of planning. But anybody who comes from a theater background or from a stage background, old hat. You just got to work in the technicality of having the camera going. Rob, when you think of these movies with big long tracking shots, like what comes to mind for you when you think of them?
Oh, Absolute Beginners, The Player, Goodfellas, all had really long tracking shots in them.
Terry Taylor in the live chat is pointing out Daredevil. Like, remember, like the hallway shot and stuff like that was pretty good too.
Well, I think you know what it is long shots are all about not just the takes, but you have to. It's a combination of blocking with the actors, the location, and your camera people. And I think when they're employed correctly, they can be dazzling. They're really hard to pull off. There's a movie called Russian Ark.
Oh, wasn't that like 20 hours or something? I can't remember.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It's like an hour and a half.
Okay, like the whole movie was like one shot, right?
The whole movie was shot in L'Hermitage in St. Petersburg. How do you pronounce that? And it's one shot, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's just it's amazing, and I think that's ballsy when you try and do something like that. It can be really dynamic from a visual perspective because with the camera always changing, you're always getting new visual information. And so it's inherently an interesting way to do it. But man, it's hard to pull off. But in Birdman, I think they did use a little bit of editorial trickery as well when they could. Because when they do those long shots, they're always using pans and things to try and, hide the edit point, but still it's impressive.
All right, next up, we got Ryan Lohner who writes, okay, Netflix, I'll jump on your Squid Game bandwagon. Now bring back the Dark Crystal, you cheap bastards. Yeah, I was so mad that they didn't do a season 2. I mean, look, I know business is business. If they weren't getting the views, they weren't getting the views. I whatever, but God, I wanted another season. That was so good. Did you watch season 1 of Dark Crystal, right, Rob?
Oh, dude, I loved it.
Oh, wasn't it good? So good. I'm so mad that they canceled that. Anyway, Nick Whitaker writes, oddly enough, I did miss Spider-Man and Shang-Chi. We were saying the other day, nobody missed Spider-Man and Shang-Chi. When his parents first met when fighting at the entrance of Ta Lo, slow motion staring at each other's faces, that whole time I was like, where the fuck is Spider-Man? Obviously, Nick's being a little bit sarcastic there, but well said, Nick, well said. All right, Dangerous D writes, hey, John, I know you watch UFC fights. I do. But do you watch Bellator MMA? Not a lot, to be honest with you. They have some good fighters like Jackie Buttman, Iron Michael Chandler. I don't think Michael Chandler isn't there anymore, I don't think. Patricio Pitbull. They had a show last Saturday. Were you able to see it? And who's your favorite fighter? I honestly don't watch Bellator. And I kind of should, but Bellator has put on so many gimmick fights that it kind of makes me not take them seriously. Like when they pull Tito Ortiz to fight the Iceman Chuck Liddell, when they're both in their 80s. I mean, they're not literally in their 80s, but I mean, when they're pulling that out and making that there, they're having these sideshow fights, it makes it hard for me to take them seriously. So even though they've got a great fighter in Ryan Bader over there, I love Ryan Bader. I think he's a fantastic fighter. He had a great UFC career. He's been dominant over there, but I don't watch a lot of it. And maybe someday I will, but for now I don't. All right, the Super Korean writes, hey, John and Rob. So I know Tobey Maguire may be in Spider-Man 3. Also Andrew Garfield. Those are the rumors. There's nothing to back up those rumors, but those are the rumors. May make an appearance too. But what if Tobey Maguire plays Uncle Ben in the MCU and Andrew Garfield plays Harry Osborn? What are your thoughts on this? Too gimmicky. I mean, look, Rob, a while ago I remember like a year and a half ago, we did a thing about, could you see Tobey Maguire as Uncle Ben in the MCU? The age is right. He could totally do that. But I think he said he would never do it. But then, having him in that, then having Andrew Garfield playing a thing, it just reeks of sad, desperate gimmickiness. Just sad, desperate gimmickiness. So I don't think that's something they do. I don't think it's something Andrew Garfield will want to do. Andrew Garfield seems more happy to be doing these Oscar bait kind of movies where, these smaller arty films, kind of like what Robert Pattinson's been doing for the last 7 years. It seems like Andrew Garfield's being happy to do these. He was just in that new trailer for, what was it? TikTok Boom, or whatever it's called.
Yep. Which looks really good.
Directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda. And then he's in The Eyes of Tammy Faye. He did that one film, I'm forgetting the name of it, that was directed by, he just directed Venom 2. Andy Serkis. He was in that one where he's the guy in the wheelchair, directed by Andy Serkis. He seems really content to be doing these things. I don't think he's wanted to come back in the Spider-Man videos to play Norman Osborn. So if they did, to me, it would reek of sad, desperate gimmickiness. I don't know. Rob, what do you think about the MCU now having Tobey Maguire as Uncle Ben and Andrew Garfield as Norman Osborn? What do you think?
Yeah, no.
Just no. Yeah, there you go.
I couldn't get past that. It'd be like, can't do that.
David McKenzie sends it. Thank you. Yes, the name of the movie, David, is Breathe. That's the movie name. Thank you, David, in the live chat. Appreciate that, man. Actually, Wiley Todd said Breathless, but I think it was Breathe. But either way, it's one of those two, but I think it was Breathe. Anyway, thanks for that, guys. Appreciate that. That's why it's great having the people in the live chat. It's awesome. All right, next up. The Super Korean writes, so I just watched Ted Lasso because of you guys, and I must say it's great. Ted Lasso is awesome. And it got me thinking about Jason Sudeikis. Do you think Jason Sudeikis can pull off a Tom Hanks effect? Comedian turned into multiple Academy Award winner. What are your thoughts? Look, Rob, I don't know what you think about this. I love Jason Sudeikis. I've always liked him ever since Saturday Night Live.
Yep.
Whenever he would come out in the red windbreaker during the What Up With That sketch and he'd do the Running Man. Like, I just love this dude. He's fearless. You got to tip your hat to any man who is married to Olivia Wilde. Good on you. I have never seen, though, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I'm just saying I have never seen in him the ability to be like an Academy level actor. He is great with comedic stuff. I mean, you watch him in, what was that movie called that Olivia Wilde directed, Booksmart?
Yep.
You watch him even in his supporting role in that. This dude can bring something to a comedic role that is just dynamite. I have personally never seen the potential in him to be an Academy Award-winning actor, though. It might be there. I'm just saying I haven't seen it yet, but I love him the way he is, and I love the types of roles he does. But I don't think he can be that Tom Hanks guy. Rob, what do you think?
I have to agree with you. But and look, I say this because we've been asked the question. I've really enjoyed Jason Sudeikis for doing a lot of the comedy roles he's done. He's really great. But could he do like a movie like what was it, No One, the Bob Odenkirk action film? Yeah. Where he really reinvented himself there. I don't know if Jason Sudeikis has that kind of versatility. However, I would say this. I do think comedians can turn around. I mean, ever since like Robin Williams did World According to Garp and then was able to do things like Good Will Hunting, I think comedians, especially sketch comedians, do have the ability to turn on their dramatic flip that dramatic switch, but it's something that you have to develop, and I would wait and see. But I tend to agree with you. What we've seen with Jason Sudeikis is he's a great, very deft comedian in a dramatic role. I don't know, but I don't want to say he can't do it.
I see. Here's the thing, though. The very fact that we have to reach all the way back to Robin Williams to show an example of that happening, or Tom Hanks, it just shows just how hard it is. Because even a guy like Jim Carrey tried to do it and wasn't really able to make that transition. Like, what's the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind? Like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind came out, and people thought, okay, maybe Jim Carrey could be the next guy to do it. But he was never really able to make that all the way. He did a couple of decent drama stuff, but wasn't able to make it all the way to that. And I think the fact that we've only really seen that with Robin Williams and Tom Hanks, like a true pure comedy guy being able to transition into a legit, like, I could see Jason Sudeikis doing Nobody, but I couldn't see him doing Philadelphia. You know, I couldn't see him doing Forrest Gump. You know, I can't see him doing that, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if he can, but I do love the dude. I think the dude's awesome. All right. Next up, we still got a few minutes here with Robert still here, so let's keep going here. Next up, we got the Super Korean again, who writes, I think I watched the most terrifying trailer that I have ever seen. It's called Deep House. Dude, I saw that. People scuba diving in a lake and find not a regular house, but a haunted house underwater. This is my nightmare incarnate. I'm getting anxious writing about it. Rob, did you see this trailer?
Yes, I did.
I had a buddy of mine send me a link to this. Okay, you got to see this. You got to see this. I'm like, all right. And I watched it. It's literally that. Dude. This couple scuba diving finds a perfectly preserved house underwater, and it's a haunted house. And I'm like, all right, I'm officially freaked out. You know what it reminded me of, Rob? It reminded me of my second all-time favorite horror film, which is The Descent. Because in The Descent, without the monsters, before the monsters ever show up, that movie will freak you the hell out, because it's these girls who are cave diving and they're in these little tiny spaces, and they're 500 feet underground trying to go through these tiny crevices, and it's so claustrophobic. So even before the monsters show up, that movie freaks you the hell out. That reminded me of this, like scuba diving. I'm a swimmer, but doing deep scuba diving into small places underwater, going inside something underwater, that to me kind of freaks me out a bit. And on top of that, oh, by the way, that house underwater, which totally should not be there, totally haunted. Oh my God. If you guys haven't seen the trailer for Deep House, Rob, what did you think of it?
Dude, I mean, for me, one of the things that really gets me hot and bothered when it comes to a horror film is the premise itself. Like, what's it about? And intellectually, is it something that I'm like, oh, that's intriguing? Well, this trailer, I'm like, because I've scuba dived before, and I'm just like, I love doing it, but man, I wouldn't go in that house.
No, sir.
And when I was looking at the trailer, I was just thinking about the logistics of filming it. I want to see the making of already for this thing, because it looks pretty cool. And you know, there are those like towns that they'd have to flood an area so a lake would be formed and the town gets buried in a lake. I mean, that's based on stuff that has happened before. And I've always been sort of intrigued by that. And I'm like, man, I want to see this movie.
Yeah, I want to see it too. By the way, just a shout out to Daniel Yosef Abdu, who sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate that, man, very much. All right, let's keep going here. Next up, we've got Michael Bradley, who writes, hello, John. Over under 5%. 2 Eternals are left at the end of the movie. Well, I've seen the movie, so I cannot answer that question even a little bit. Unfortunately, if I had gotten to this question before watching the movie last night, maybe I could have answered that, but I cannot give an answer to that. All right. Dangerous D writes, hey, John. With Daniel Craig stepping down as James Bond, many names keep popping up. But what if the producers want an American to play the character? Who might be a good fit? Michael B. Jordan, Chris Pratt, Chris Evans, Chris Pine, or John David Washington? Here's the thing, Dangerous D, you know me. I don't do X actor and X role questions. It won't matter to them whether, I mean, I think the British would get really upset if they had a non-British James Bond, but I think you can do that. I don't think James Bond has to be British. You see a lot of British actors playing American characters. I think if you got somebody who can do the right accent, you can have an American actor play the role. You can.
How about a Scottish actor? Come on.
Well, I mean,
Richard Madden for James Bond. That's my number one choice.
They've already had a Scottish actor playing James Bond, so why
yes,
not go back and do it again? So yeah, they can, but you know me, all I care about is a good actor. If it's a good actor, good on you, you're ready to go. But other than that, I don't really do X actor and X role things. All right, next up. We've got Chris who writes, "Hey, John, love all that you do." Thank you so much, Chris. "With the rumors of time travel in Indy 5, how about this as a title suggestion? Indiana Jones, No Time to Die. Get it? Since Indiana Jones is inspired by Bond, well, one of the many inspirations for Indiana Jones was Bond. Just kidding. Honestly, if they do that, I'm curious, but we'll see. Yeah, again, I still cannot believe they've pushed this thing another year. And it will literally be 15 years since Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and this new one coming out. It's I don't know. It's kind of crazy to me. All right, next up, the Super Korean writes, "Hey, John and Rob. So on the topic of James Bond, I always thought it would be cool to see Sean Connery or Roger Moore or even Timothy Dalton as M to shepherd and be in charge of the younger double O's like Pierce Brosnan, Daniel Craig, and whomever." Here's the problem with that. Number one, you can't say he's James Bond now instead of the 007 employee number. He now has an employee letter of M, because then the next character couldn't be James Bond. I mean, James Bond is not a title. James Bond is a person. 007 is a title. I don't know if it would just be gimmicky. Rob, I don't know. Like, what would you think if the next James Bond comes out? Let's just say, for argument's sake, I don't know. Let's say it's Tom Hiddleston for argument's sake as the next James Bond.
He'd be good.
And Timothy Dalton is playing M. Would that be too gimmicky, or would you be down for something like that? Like, as a hardcore James Bond fan?
Well, I mean, I love Timothy Dalton as Bond, but I don't. I mean, if you went that way, I think you'd have to finally come out and say that the name James Bond is a code name, along with 007, and that Timothy Dalton was in fact 007. Play it as it lays. You couldn't
just say he's a totally different guy who is now.
I mean, you could, but I think it would be like, again, it's so gimmicky.
Yeah, it is kind of gimmicky. I agree.
Again, it depends how it's handled, really.
Right.
So
I agree. All right. By the way, Tom GTAs sends in a super chat badge in live chat. Thank you, Top GTAs. Appreciate that, man. All right. Let's see. Next up, we've got Super Korean again, who writes in, "Hey, John and Rob. So I'm watching Aquaman King of Atlantis, and I'm getting a kick out of it. I wouldn't say it's fantastic, but pretty funny. The animation kind of reminds me of Dexter's Laboratory. John and Rob, have you seen this yet? If that's the stuff that they showcase, and you guys help me in the live chat if it is, if that's the stuff they showcased on DC Fandom, it looks fucking ass awful."
Yeah,
I look terrible. I have no interest in that. Like, none.
I have not
Zero.
seen it, but yeah, it does not look great to me.
I'm all for it. Looking forward to the next Jason Momoa Aquaman movie. Like, I'm all about that. But yeah, that thing just looked like ass. I have no desire to watch that. I'm glad you're enjoying it, dude. If you're getting a kick out of it, that's awesome. But I have no desire to watch it myself. All right, Peter Cunnington writes, "Do you think the MCU is setting up the Young Avengers, and who do you think might be in it? Do you think it will be a Disney Plus show or a movie? More than likely, it'll just be Disney Plus, as some of the shows have already set up a few Young Avengers. I'm going to be on the outside looking in. Look, they absolutely could be doing that. But Rob, I know you and I disagree on this. I do not think they're setting up a Young Avengers. I know there are characters who are associated with the Young Avengers being introduced in the MCU. That doesn't mean they're doing Young Avengers. I don't think they're doing Young Avengers. Don't get me wrong. Don't say, John Campea reports that they are not doing Young. No. I'm just giving you my opinion right now as a fan. I could totally change my mind after watching the Hawkeye series. But for now, no, I just think they're bringing in new characters. I do not think they're setting up a Young Avengers. But Rob, I think you believe they are. Do you think they're setting up a Young Avengers? What makes you think that?
Well, because they keep adding characters that are part of the Young Avengers into all these shows, especially the TV shows. Like obviously Wanda Maximoff's kids were part of Young Avengers. Haley Stansfield, is it Stansfield?
Stanfield.
Stanfield, she's part of that, and I think that they're slowly introducing these characters, and whether they do a series or a movie, I could see them doing that.
All right, let's go on here. Next up, we've got Leo writes, I had a tough choice, advanced screening of Dune, or what I didn't know was my local theater's last showing of Titane before it leaves theaters near me. I chose Dune because I wanted to be able to tell people how it was. What would you have done? Well, Rob, obviously, Dune is my number one most anticipated movie of the year. So obviously I would have done Dune. But I know you've been really looking forward to Titane. I don't know if you had a chance to see it yet or not. But
I have yet to see it, but I'm going to see it in 2 days. And I can't
wait. Got your tickets for it already?
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. The last one we'll do with Rob still here with us today comes us from Leo, who writes, oh, no, that was Leo. The Leo Milmet writes, hey, John and gang, love the show. Thank you so much. And love to all of you. Thanks for the daily enjoyment. Anyway, I'm curious about John's answer to this quandary. Buy one, rent one, lose one. The harder they fall. Sorry to bother you. Fast 9. All right. So I just recently saw The Harder They Fall, and I love the trailers. I thought the movie was utter garbage. I thought the movie was utter garbage. Despite some good performances in it and an incredible cast, amazing cast. I couldn't have cast it any better myself. Not that I'm a great caster, but I thought the movie was terrible. I thought it was terrible, but it has some redeeming qualities and it has its moments. I still think it's a very bad movie, but there are definitely redeeming qualities about it, and there's some decent moments in it. I can also say for Fast 9, as I think at the absolute worst Fast and Furious movie, there are moments that I was giggling and laughing. I mean, there was lots I was laughing at for the wrong reasons, but there were moments that I was laughing when they were trying to get me to laugh. Sorry to Bother You is a movie that never should have been made. Look, all film is subjective, Rob. I get it. I know that it is. All film is subjective. There are people who like this film. Hell, there are some critics I know that think it's a masterpiece of a movie. I think it is schlock. Absolute garbage. I hate that movie. So I would buy The Harder They Fall, rent Fast 9, and I would lose Sorry to Bother You. Which, by the way, 2 of those have an actor I really love, Lakeith Stanfield. I think he's amazing. I love him. Ever since I saw him in Atlanta, I've always been enamored with this dude. But yeah, unfortunately, he's in 2 of these films. Rob, what about you? Buy one, rent one, lose one. Well, I guess you can't do it, I guess, because you haven't seen The Harder They Fall yet.
I haven't seen The Harder They Fall, but I I didn't like Sorry to Bother You either. I didn't dislike it as much as you did, though. I thought there was some interesting stuff in there, but it was not a favorite of mine. As a matter of fact, I was let down by it. So of those 2, I hate to say this, I'd probably keep Fast 9 only because I have loyalty to the franchise.
Well, that's a good enough reason. That's as good a reason as any. I get that. But speaking of good things, Rob, thank you for being here today and contributing your glory and goodness. Of course, I'll be seeing you in a few hours from now as we go to watch Eternals.
You will.
So we'll talk about that. By the way, guys, keep your eyes open on the channel. I'll be putting up Rob's first reaction coming out of the theater later. But in the meantime, Rob, where can people follow you and all of your glory and greatness online?
You can find me at Burnett RM on Twitter. Find me on Instagram at my name, Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work.
All right, dude, thanks a lot for being here, and I'll talk to you in a few hours. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and the only, the great Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. All right, guys, we still have some time, so let's get through some more of your questions here, shall we? We're going to keep things rolling here with Leo Milmet, who writes, 1 of 2. Hey, John, I wanted to thank you for the variety and depth of the show's discussions. For example, you are not a huge fan of Scream, so it would have been understandable for you not to make the new trailer a topic, but I love Scream 1 and 2, but was unaware, and he didn't put in a part 2 or 3. So sorry about that, Leo, we lost it. But anyway, yeah, listen, we don't only talk on this show about things that I like. I think if there's things on the show that I think my audience would be interested in, even if it's things I'm not interested in, we'll talk about it for sure. And Scream, yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Scream franchise. I like the first film for sure, like everybody else. but I'm not a big fan of the Scream franchise. But I know a lot of our audience do like Scream. So it's definitely worth discussing and talking about. So yeah, we'll do that. So thank you for saying that, Leo. Appreciate that, man. All right, next up, Connor O'Neill writes, I can't believe I skipped my cousin's wedding for this. Oh, you were writing that. That came in during the DC fandom thing. Yeah, I can't even put into words how disappointed I was, Connor, in that DC fandom. I mean, some definite moments, but you could have made DC fandom literally a 15-minute YouTube video with all the good stuff, and 4 hours of wasted stuff, unfortunately. All right, Suthius writes, man, when you said you were going to cancel the stream talking about DC fandom because of fandom not cooperating, and you told us to go and watch anyways, I can't believe I actually ended your video. So I went back to YouTube afterwards and saw that you completed the stream. Yeah, I did finish the whole thing, even though we were having streaming issues. I wasn't having streaming issues with any other website, YouTube channel, or video stream except for DC Fandom stream on YouTube and on DC Fandom's webpage. But I did go ahead and finish it out anyway. I later took the video down because, not surprisingly, had like 6 copyright claims filed. Seriously, I'm not kidding. By the time I finished my DC Fandom stream, my inbox had like 6 or 7 copyright notices for me, because I had the video up of DC Fandom on my screen, obviously. And so I just decided to save myself the headache and took the whole video down afterwards. So yeah, there was that, unfortunately. So for those of you who were asking me, hey, John, where's your DC Fandom stream? We did it live, but then I had to take it down because there were too many copyright claims against it. So I had to pull the thing down. All right, next up. Let's see. Paul Starguy writes, 1 of 2. I saw No Time to Die on the 8th and enjoyed it. Some classic Bond moments on Her Majesty's Secret Service vibe throughout. Fun fact, I've seen every Bond film since 1972's Diamonds Are Forever in the theaters. Jill St. John in a bikini was quite impressive to a 12-year-old boy. Well, guess what? It's impressive to any year-old person. And who doesn't like watching a moon buggy careening through the desert? I mean, listen, the Bond films, a lot of people forget that the Bond films have some of the most ridiculous, silly things ever. Like, some of them are more gritty and a little more grounded, and some of them are just spectacularly weird and have some like really, really weird stuff in them. But yeah, as far as the latest movie, I know it wasn't for everybody. Rob says he didn't like James Bond No Time to Die. I thought it was quite a good movie. I don't think it was the best Bond film. Hell, I don't even think it was the best Daniel Craig Bond film. I don't even think it was the second best Daniel Craig Bond film. I thought Casino Royale is the best Daniel Craig Bond film. I thought Skyfall was the second. I think No Time to Die is the third. But I still thought it was quite good. But it wasn't for everybody. All right, next up, we go to Cody, who writes, DC Fandom came and went with no Green Lantern news, nothing about the HBO show, nothing about a feature film. What does this say about the future of the character in live action? If they did have plans, surely Fandom would have been where they'd announce them. Here's the thing, look, and I'm not gonna start ranting and raving about DC Fandom again, but it does highlight this. They didn't announce shit at DC Fandom. They didn't announce anything. Like today on Deadline, or it might have been last night, a story broke on Deadline about a new casting in the Batgirl movie and confirming that J.K. Simmons is going to be Commissioner Gordon. Gosh, you might think DC Fandom would have been a good place to make announcements like that. But no, they didn't. Now, I also complained about the fact that, hey, why not at least tell people where you're at with Green Lantern? Now, I'm not tripping over myself in excitement for a Green Lantern project. I'm interested, but there are a lot of people who are. And you're telling everybody, tune into DC Fandom, everybody, tune in, gotta watch DC Fandom if you're a DC fan. And then you don't give any news. You give no announcements. You give 1 minute of screen time to Flash and 5 minutes to Cam Newton's Superman hats. I mean, why not at least say, hey, guys, look, we've obviously got nothing to show you for Green Lantern, but just know that we are still working really hard on bringing a Green Lantern. Say something, right? Now, I did have a friend of mine say to me a very, very good point. A very, very good point. That, maybe the reason they didn't talk about Green Lantern is because that's not something that'll even get started on until after Discovery takes over Warner Brothers. And who knows what's going to happen after that. That's a good point. That's a good point. Maybe they were limited about announcing future stuff because who knows what the future holds, given the fact that Warner Brothers is about to be taken over by Discovery. That's a fair point. And I acknowledge that point. There is still a lot of stuff they should have done. Like, Flash is shooting, man. Talk about the Flash. Great, you showed us a 1-minute thing, which was nice, but last year you had 5 minutes or more of discussion about the Flash movie. Now that you've shot a lot of it, there should be even more to talk about. Discuss the philosophy of it. Discuss, what's important to you about the character. Discuss, you don't have to give away things about the movie, but anyway, I said I wouldn't go on another DC fandom rant. It was such a disaster. It's so disappointing because last year's was so good. DC fandom last year was so good. This year was a complete, utter disaster with a few bright spot moments peppered in there. The Aquaman footage, the Batman trailer, obviously, but that's all stuff that could have gone into a single 15-minute video. Anyway. Okay, sorry, I said I wouldn't rant and I ended up ranting. Anyway, Willow writes, let's see. Is there an actor whom you think is really talented, but just keeps on ending up in bad movies? I don't think that Michael Fassbender has been in a good role since Steve Jobs. Yeah, Michael Fassbender has been in a string of terrible movies. Light Between Oceans, The Snowman. There was another one that was really bad that I'm trying to remember, and he's a great actor. You know who I think of when I think about stuff like this? Do you guys remember Taylor Kitsch? You guys remember Taylor Kitsch? He starred in John Carter. And then he did this little action spy movie with Michael Keaton like a year or two ago as well. I can't remember the name of it right now. Taylor, and then he was supposed to be Gambit in the Fox X-Men universe. By the way, I guess I can take these headphones off now. He was supposed to play Gambit in the Fox X-Men universe. So he popped up in Fox's X-Men Origins Wolverine, but that whole movie was a disaster. X-Men Origins Wolverine, the whole movie was a complete disaster, and so he kind of got dropped from that. Angel is also reminding us that, yes, he was also in Battleship. He is a really good actor. Taylor Kitsch is a really good actor. But he unfortunately ends up being in either A, bad movies, or pretty good movies that nobody watches. Like, I thought the one he did with Michael Keaton was pretty good. I love John Carter. I thought that was great. So he ends up being in either some bad movies or movies that nobody watches. Taylor Kitsch is a guy who should be a bigger star than he is. So I will say my answer to that one, Willow, is going to be Taylor Kitsch. That's what I'll go with. All right, Suthius writes, here's a little bit of positivity in regards to fandom. I very much enjoyed the entire thing. Even though I wasn't interested in some of the content, it was just cool to see a lot of new, different things for everyone who is or may be fan of all things DC. I respect that, Suthius, and I'm glad. But here's what I said to that. There is no denying this. Okay? No denying this. I get it. I got the messages from people saying, well, John, you're just not a true DC fan because true DC fans like everything DC, whether it's clothing lines or comic books and blah, blah. I get that. I do. I understand that. But what you cannot get away from, and what is absolutely true, is that 90% of the people who tuned into DC fandom were there to see the movie lineup, or at least the high profile television stuff and movie lineup. That's who they were appealing to. Everybody was there to see the Batman trailer. Everybody, that's why people were there. They were there to see the Batman trailer. They were there to see something on Aquaman. They were there to see something on The Flash. That's the majority of the people who were there. What they should have done is separated it. Because what DC fandom this year was we'll bait everybody in with promises of a Batman trailer that played for 2 minutes during a 4-hour stream. But what we'll really do is once we bait them in to come to DC fandom, we'll push all of our other stuff on them that they're not there to see or care about. You know what you need in your life? Some Cam Newton Superman hats. You know what you need in your life? Some Dove soap sponsored stuff. You know what you need in your life? You need some Puma shirts that are themed. You know what you need in your life? We're going to talk about this god awful, fucking terrible looking Aquaman cartoon. So they baited people in with the stuff with the promise of things they wanted to see, give them a tiny little bit of what they actually wanted to see. And now that you've got them there as a captive audience, force on them the things that you want to promote to them. DC Fandom last year was a celebration of DC content. This year's DC Fandom was a 3.5-hour commercial of stuff people aren't interested in that you try to force them to be interested in with the promise of giving them little tiny bits of the stuff they were actually there to see. That bothers me. It bothered me. It was just fluff and ads. Anyway, but listen, Suthius, you had a good time watching it, and I'm glad that you did, because you needed to have a good time for both of us, because I didn't have much fun watching it, other than those tiny little fleeting moments when they gave us some diamonds in the rough. The Shazam footage, the Aquaman behind-the-scenes stuff, obviously the Batman trailer, which was insanely great. But I'm glad you had a good time, man. You needed to have a good enough time for both of us. All right. Let's see. Just got time for one or two more here. Nate Dogg writes, I just watched the first episode of La Brea, and I'm dumbfounded how such a cliche-ridden dumpster fire of a show can be made. It's one of the worst things I've seen. It's all cliches and stock characters. The writing is just appalling, and yet somebody greenlit it and spent money to make it. Even the CGI and set designs are terrible. NBC should be ashamed for putting out such schlock. It's an embarrassment. How do such terrible TV shows get made? Here's the funny thing, Nate Dogg, and this just shows the subjectivity things. I haven't watched it yet. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to try it. Doesn't look great to me, but I've talked to a couple people who really like the show so far. Now, don't throw me under the bus. I'm just telling you what other people have told me, okay? Now, my brother-in-law, Ray, who does our graphics and who may be in the live chat right now, I think he saw it and he didn't like it very much. But I have heard from other people that said they actually kind of like it. Now, I haven't checked it out myself, but it's not making a great impression on me. So I may have to, I'll let you know what I think of it, Nate Dogg, once I have a chance to see it. All right. Next up, also comes to us from Nate Dogg, who writes, I was talking to a friend the other day, and he made the point that DC has no good gods like Thor and Marvel. All the DC gods in DC are either bad, mad, or otherwise conflicted. I think he might have a point. What do you think? Are there any good gods in DC? As far as the movies go, I don't know. I mean, in the movie universe, Wonder Woman is part god. Like, don't they make it clear that in the movies that she's actually Zeus's daughter? If she's Zeus's daughter in the movies? I can't remember exactly now, but that makes her part god. So yeah, I guess that would mean there's a good god. Maybe, I guess. As far as the rest of I'm not quite sure yet, but let's see what happens once they start expanding that out a little bit more. All right. Thanks for that, Nate Dogg. Next up. Suthius writes, there are a few good things I took away from or noticed about fandom, though. 1, there was no Hamada. Any ideas why? 2, I'll be able to finally watch Pennyworth on IMAX. Yeah, I'm excited about that. It was a momentary thing, but I was excited about that. And 3, I said to myself, I cannot wait to see Mr. Campea's reaction when Campea pops up. Yeah, there's that. Yeah, it seems like for DC fandom this year, they really stayed away from the executives. Like at DC fandom last year, you had a number of Warner Brothers and higher up DC executives doing things. Jim Lee, because it's Jim Lee. I mean, he's all-time iconic classic name in the world of comics and everything else. So yeah, you had a bit of that. But they kept it more on the recognizable talent rather than the executives this year. So that's my guess. Just a guess, but that's my guess. All right. Next up, Jack Lumbers writes, in terms of production, how bad was the 2008 writer's strike? awful. It was catastrophic. I know shows like Scrubs and Heroes got their seasons cut short. It wasn't just that they were cut short, they were massively affected. I was only in middle school when it happened, and I would like to know how it was from your perspective. Listen, honestly, the best thing to do about that is go and look up some YouTube videos on the Hollywood writer's strike. That'll give you, we don't have time to go into it here, but that will give you, it was very, very significant. And listen, to some degree, we are still feeling the effects of that writer's strike today. But there are some really good kind of documentary style videos on YouTube about the writer's strike. I would highly encourage you to go and look up some of those. And hey, guys in the live chat, if any of you guys in the live chat know of some like really good videos about that, plop them in the chat or in the description of this video so Jack Lumbers and others can go and check that stuff out. All right. Next up, Luke1234 writes, the Movies That Made Us season 3 is on Netflix. It's featuring my favorite film of all time, RoboCop. You're coming with me. This is also exciting because younger film fans who may never have seen it may become interested in seeing this masterpiece for the first time. You know what, Luke1234, I'm going to say something very unpopular. I'm going to say something very, very unpopular. That unpopular thing is this. I don't think many people who don't already know RoboCop are going to watch that episode of the Movies That Made Us. Obviously, the reason they do RoboCop is because they think a lot of people will watch it if we talk about RoboCop. I don't think it's going to attract a lot of people who don't know RoboCop or never saw RoboCop. I don't think it's going to get much of a new audience. But here's the unpopular thing. You know what did turn more people on to the original RoboCop? The RoboCop reboot. I always have this argument with people, but the statistics and the polling always shows that it's true. A lot of people may hate reboots, but one of the things that reboots does, when reboots come out, you see interest in the originals jump, like skyrocket, like a ton. Do you know how many people got turned on to the original The Ring once the North American version got made? Or how many people got turned on to the original Grudge? I'm trying to remember what the original Asian name was. Ju-on, I think it's called. Anyway, the original Asian version of The Grudge, because they made a North American version. Do you know how many people got turned on and actually checked out Infernal Affairs that never would have checked it out if it wasn't for Marty Scorsese's The Departed? Even I remember when Colin Farrell and Bryan Cranston made the remake of that Arnold Schwarzenegger classic action. Was it Running Man? Guys in the live chat, which one was it again? By the way, I just want to say shout out to Ms. Marvel for sending in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, Ms. Marvel. Appreciate that very much. But guys in the live chat, it was Total Recall. Thank you. Joseph SFL was the first one to get it in. But as does Victor Vodka, Nathan Lovin, Ben Rayner, and others. So Total Recall. Here's the thing. I remember a big story at the time is like rentals and things like that of the original Total Recall jumped like 5,000% or something like that when the reboot came out. One of the great things about reboots is it draws and gives attention to the original. A lot of people go, if a reboot gets made, that ruins the original. No. It actually brings attention to the original. And I remember, I know friends who never saw the original RoboCop, but because a reboot of RoboCop was coming out, they went back and checked out the original RoboCop. Awesome. And by the way, the RoboCop reboot ain't bad. I know a lot of Puritans cried about it, but I honestly think Michael Keaton was great in it. I honestly thought that the RoboCop reboot really wasn't bad. It wasn't as good as the original, make no mistake about it, but it actually wasn't bad. It was actually pretty good, I thought. But the key thing here is that it actually brought attention to the original RoboCop, which got more people interested in it. So that is one of the very, very good things about reboots, in my opinion, at any rate. All right. Oh, actually, Samoski actually says Old Boy is another great example of that. Like when the Old Boy remake came out in North America with Josh Brolin and Scarlet Witch, Elizabeth. Why am I forgetting Elizabeth's last name off the top of my head? I'm suddenly freezing her name. Anyway, when that Olsen, that's what it was, Olsen. When the Old Boy remake with Josh Brolin and Elizabeth Olsen came out, a lot of people never even heard of the original Old Boy. And they went back and checked it out. So that's another good example of that. All right. Let's see. Next up, we've got... that was Luke 1234. Okay, we're at BWL writes, John, I live in Canada, fellow Canadian, thank you, and I am currently on a government disability pension. In other words, I live below the poverty line. When I do see a movie in theaters, is it unethical for me to purchase a child's or senior's ticket because they cost less? I am 42. Ooh, ethical questions. It depends. Look, if you're 42, it means I highly doubt you could pass for a senior, and I highly doubt you could pass for a child. Therefore, to me, that means the theater is acknowledging, and they're just kind of winking their eye and letting you in. In a situation like that, if the party you are allegedly wronging is acknowledging you and letting you get away with it, then is it unethical anymore? Like, it's unethical for Ray to come over to my house when I'm not home, come into my house, and I'm sure Ray is watching right now. Not that he's ever done this, but it would be unethical for Ray to come over to my house when I'm not home, enter my house, come into my kitchen, open my fridge, and start eating my food. It's unethical. But if I know that he does it and I'm just like, whatever, he's doing that, fine. Well, if I know that he's doing it, is it unethical anymore? Maybe not. So I don't know. It's a good ethical question, a movie-related ethical question, man. That is a good question. I'm not sure. Meanwhile, people in live chat are saying, John, do you not pay Ray enough to eat? I pay Ray enough to eat. Don't worry about Ray. I pay Ray enough. Anyway, so there's that. So good ethical question, man. What do you guys think about that? It's a good one to bring up, dude. All right, next up. Dwayne Jackson writes, with DC fandom come and gone, there is some interesting things that was shown, like the Batman and the Peacemaker, etc. There was no mention of Green Lantern. Again, a lot of people wondering why no mention of Green Lantern series. What happened? They knew since 2019 that this day was coming. Did they drop the ball? I have no idea. Listen, it wasn't just Green Lantern. There's a ton of stuff they didn't even talk about. Which to me is, again, well, why have DC fandom? If you're not going to talk about or let the audience know where things are at, what's the point of even having it? This is kind of my take on it. All right, guys, last question of the day gets sent in to us by Scott Brown, who writes, I saw Halloween Kills, and it was okay. Not nearly as good as the 2018 one. I agree. The scenes with Michael in the 2008 cast were good, but every time they transitioned away to the bar or hospital or someone else, just killed the momentum and intensity. I completely agree, Scott. I completely agree. All the best moments of Halloween Kills were involving Michael and the cast from the first film. Whenever they went off to this new batch of characters and the townsfolk, total waste. It just totally lost me. I love the 2018 version. I loved it. So I was really excited about this sequel. Really excited about it. And I think I'm with you, Scott. I think to me, at best, it was okay. It's okay. It's got its moments. Like, without spoiling anything, I loved Big John and Little John. I thought they were great. But everything else that involved Anthony Michael Hall, who I really like him as an actor very, very much, but everything involving him in this movie was stupid, and all his little crowd of people, and the ending was dumb as hell. But anyway, whatever. It is what it is. Okay. Next up. Oh, no, I said that was going to be the last one, right? Okay. Anyway, guys, there are still more questions to come from, I think that was Scott Brown, right? From Dixie, Hagu, Marie, and others. Do not worry, guys. We're going to do a companion video a little bit later tonight, so keep your eyes open for that, and we will get caught up on more of these questions here. But for now, guys, that'll do it for this installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much, guys, for being here and being a part of our show today. Don't forget, keep your guys' eyes open on the YouTube channel a little bit later tonight. We'll be posting up Robert Meyer Burnett's initial reactions of Eternals walking out of the theaters. Maybe I'll have some more thoughts on it too. I need to unpack more of it. Again, it's not a perfect movie. I mean, it's dense, it's rich, it's totally different. Something's done extremely great. There's some things I got some gripes about, but I need to process it more. Maybe after I see it for a second time, I'll be able to get some more thoughts. But you'll be getting Robert Meyer Burnett's first reaction coming out of that a little bit later tonight. Keep your eyes open for that. Again, we'll be also doing a companion video later tonight. And of course, don't forget to join us again for the John Campea Show tomorrow. All right, guys. That'll do it for me for now. Remember to do the 4 main things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.